Hey everyone, Lynn Marie here. Happy Thursday. I have a quit of the week that comes to us by request from my buddy Leaf from A-Fest. And this quit is not, it's peripherally related to his request. And I will read the request in a second, but I wanted to preface this by saying this quit is especially helpful for those of us who are supposed to be coaches or healers or attorneys, anybody who typically people are supposed to come to for advice or for healing of some sort. So I will read what Lee's request was. He asked me to discuss quit wasting energy on habitual reactions. And this was probably weeks ago he requested this, and something happened when I looked at it and I didn't have an instant answer. I thought, okay, I'm gonna have to think a lot about this one. And other quits kept coming up, so I got to keep, putting it off. And finally today I was like, okay, it's quit of the week time. We're gonna get to Leaf's quit. And I had to stop and examine, why do I have a little bit of feeling of resistance of trying to answer this question, aside from the fact that I didn't know, which we'll get to in a second is probably part of it. So after my meditation today, I was laying there, I was like, what am I gonna say? What am I gonna say? Then I was like, again, let's examine why I think this is hard. And I think there are two reasons. Number one, I will tell you about, and number two relates to our quit of the week. So the first reason I decided this is hard is because a habitual reaction is essentially what I would say is akin to a mental reflex. So, if you touch a hot stove accidentally, you're gonna bring your hand back reflexively. And that reflex never even travels to the brain. That's how reflexes work. They go to the spinal cord and come back. There's not a chance for your brain to override that signal and say, nope, leave your hand there. The only way you can is if you say, I'm planning on burning my hand, I'm gonna touch this thing, then it's not a reflex, you know what's coming. But an actual reflex does not cross the brain, so you cannot step in and stop it, right? So a habitual reaction, like Leaf talked about, wasting energy on habitual reactions, that to me is like a mental reflex. I would recategorize his habitual reaction as a mental reflex. Now, same thing, I think this is why I decided to myself, it was so hard to address this, is I was essentially having to try to figure out how you quit having a reflex, which at least in the physical aspect is almost impossible unless you are, say, a monk and you have trained yourself to perhaps, decrease your nervous system responses. And probably also monks would be the ones to be able to do it in the mental aspect as well. And so I kind of laughed to myself as I was thinking this. I thought, man, I wish in Italy, Leaf had brought this to me and I could have walked over with Leaf and asked Jay Shetty, everybody's favorite A-Fest presenter and former monk, hey, Jay, how do you, as somebody who has actual monk training, deal with these habitual mental reactions? And as not luck and not coincidence, but perfect synchronicity would have it, up pops on my podcast app, there is an episode of the Aubrey Marcus podcast with Jay Shetty, said monk. And I was like, okay, let's just listen to this as I'm, preparing for my workout, whatever. Not like 5 or 6 minutes into the podcast, does Jay address this exact thing? Now, not the habitual reaction, but reactions in general, mental reflexes in general. And he essentially said, you don't quit them. You just decrease the time between when you have them and when you can deconstruct or reframe them. And he said it better. Please listen to this podcast. I will put it in the show, or in not the show notes, in the comments below. It's incredible throughout. He says so many kind of mind-blowing things, but that was the first one. It just came right to me. It was like, you can't quit habitual reactions. That's asking yourself something impossible. So as for Leaf, I will redirect you to Jay Shetty. But it's something that you can't quit, but what you could quit doing is negatively criticizing yourself for having that. And that's even addressed in the episode, is having shame or guilt over your reactions to things when you're like, I've been a monk, I've done the work, or, Aubrey Marcus is like, I've done a ton of meditation and self-work and plant ceremonies, and why do I still have these reactions and these feelings? So what you can quit is the guilt and shame associated with that. So on to reason number 2, why I believe this was a hard one for me to answer. And it relates to something that I discussed in the realness retreat with my friends last weekend. We'd all gone around in a circle and we had journaled some things, and it was supposed to kind of, bring up some turmoil we were having. And one of the turmoils, or my soul turmoil I was having in this discussion, was that of feeling like an imposter in many areas. And specifically, I was talking at this point about being a doctor, and I've been a doctor for 13 years. And yet when my parents call and say, like, I have a fever, I'm generally like, did you Google it? Like, I don't treat patients, and I haven't for 8 years. I work at the VA doing compensation and pension, which means I get people richer and not better. And, 8 years is a long time to go without knowing how you fix a flu or a lot of other things. And so when people come to me with medical things, I'm like, oh my God, I'm just like panic stricken. They're going to find out that I'm not a great doctor anymore. And my imposter syndrome is on fire. And I had a flicker of that when Leaf asked his question, because as a, quitting expert or whatever I'm, purporting myself to be in this arena, knowledgeable quitting person, evangelist, I'm supposed to have an answer to this. And I think that was why it brought up so much resistance, in addition to it being what I thought of as a reflex, is that, oh no, I don't have the answer to this. He's come to me with something and I'm going to be outed as an imposter because I'm supposed to know all there is to know about quitting, and I don't know how to quit this thing. So it brings us to this week's quit of the week, which is quit thinking you have to have all the answers. And it was a lovely theme that was brought up by the people at the realness retreat. They said, like, look, just be honest. If you're, when your parents call with a condition you don't know about, just say, look, I haven't done this for 8 years. I'll Google and I'll try to find out as much as I can and I'll pass it along to you. But, it's not really my area of expertise anymore. And I said, yeah, I know. I said, it's a little bothersome to me because my parents spent all this time supporting me, probably thinking like, oh, how useful it is to have a doctor in the family. And then she is not useful at all, neither of them being veterans. So anyway, it rung true today when I was like, oh, this is right back with what we were discussing at the retreat, is that I have to be okay at some point in time saying, I don't know that answer. And back in medical school, when your attending doctor, would ask you some super intricate medical question, if you've ever watched Scrubs or Grey's Anatomy or whatever the shows are, you'll see that, like, put a medical student on the spot, and if you didn't know, you have to say, I don't know, but I'm going to look that up for you. That was like the canned response you were supposed to give. And you know what? It still works today. But sometimes it's not even like, I can look that up for you. Sometimes it's, hey, Leaf, I don't really know the answer to your question, but I bet Jay Shetty does. And here's a podcast by Jay Shetty. Or, I don't know the answer to that. That's a career question. That might be like an interview or a resume question. But guess what? Scott Barlow of Happen to Your Career does know that. I don't have to know every aspect of everything that could be possibly peripherally related to quitting, but I just do have to be willing to help whoever comes to me with that find those answers. So for those of you who are healers, or as I said, put in any situation where people come to you for information or advice, I would highly recommend that if there's any internal struggle that you feel similar to mine, like, oh, I have to know everything all the time or I'm going to be exposed as a fraud, realize that just like in medicine where we decided, okay, we're going to stop, I decided I'm going to stop memorizing all the medicines because you can Google them in 2 seconds, but you know how to Google them. Know that as a healer or as a person that people come to, you probably have the tools to help them on the path to the answer. And that may be all they need, is just a little bit of direction. Don't put so much pressure on yourself to have all of the answers. Leaf, I hope that helps. I would recommend every single person watching this to check out the episode that I'm going to put in the comments, because it's great on that front and 1,000 other fronts. Jay Shetty is a true, I don't even know, like the thing to put in here, former monk / current visionary. He's got a really great grasp on how to get across concepts that plague all of us every day while being totally human. So check it out. And one last thing, if you have been enjoying these quits of the weeks and you would like to know that they are occurring, let me know in the comments or in a private message or wherever you'd like whether or not you would enjoy being in a Facebook group that is dedicated to strategic quitters. So you know how Facebook works. You might see this, you might not, unless you like have notifications on for me. You may or may not see the quits of the week. And in a Facebook group, you are much more likely to get a notification that says, hey, there's something in this Facebook group. So if you feel as though you would like to go there, and there would be the quits of the week, and there would be some other generic's not the word I was looking for, general quitting advice, meaning not specific to any particular quit of the week, but you can also interact with other people who may be going through quits. If you would be interested in that, I would be amenable to starting that group. So please let me know. Like I said, comments wherever you'd like, Instagram, YouTube, wherever. I would be interested in starting that if it would serve you guys. Anyway, that's all I've got for this week. Hope you have a fantastic Thursday, and I'll talk to you next week. Bye.